Most people think success is hard because they're not disciplined enough. That's not true. In clinical psychology, we see something far more interesting. The brain doesn't resist effort, it resists identity conflict. If your daily actions don't match how you see yourself, your nervous system quietly sabotages you. You procrastinate, lose energy, and call it lack of motivation. But motivation was never the problem. The real issue is that you're trying to build a future using a self-image that belongs to your past. Once you understand this, success stops feeling like a constant battle and starts feeling like alignment. The human mind is not driven primarily by goals, it is driven by identity. From a clinical perspective, behavior is regulated by the brain's need for internal consistency. When actions align with self-perception, the nervous system experiences minimal resistance. When they do not, the brain activates avoidance, procrastination, and emotional fatigue. This is why change feels exhausting when it is approached as something you do rather than something you are. Identity regulation operates below conscious motivation. The mind continuously asks a silent question: is this behavior consistent with who I believe I am? If the answer is no, the brain interprets the action as a threat to psychological stability. This triggers stress responses, self-doubt, and eventual disengagement. People often mislabel this response as laziness, when in reality it is the brain protecting identity coherence. Sustainable success emerges when identity precedes effort. When a person internalizes a self-concept such as, I am someone who completes tasks, or I am someone who follows structure, the brain no longer treats discipline as force. The behavior becomes familiar, almost automatic. Neurologically, this reduces activity in regions associated with conflict and increases efficiency in habit-forming circuits. From a therapeutic standpoint, the goal is not to chase outcomes but to modify internal narratives. Small, repeated actions are used not for their immediate results, but as evidence that reshapes self-perception. Over time, the brain updates its identity model, and resistance decreases naturally. At that point, consistency no longer requires emotional intensity. The system is doing the work. Emotional load refers to the invisible psychological weight carried by the nervous system throughout the day. From a clinical standpoint, most people are not failing because their goals are too big, but because their emotional capacity is already depleted before meaningful work even begins. The brain has a limited tolerance for unresolved stress, suppressed emotion, and constant self-monitoring. When this load exceeds a certain threshold, the mind shifts into conservation mode. Focus drops, patience shortens, and avoidance behaviors increase, not as weakness, but as protection. Unlike physical fatigue, emotional exhaustion is often misinterpreted. People assume they need more discipline, when what they actually need is regulation. The nervous system prioritizes safety over productivity. If emotional tension remains unprocessed, the brain treats effort as a threat and subtly disengages. This is why individuals under chronic stress can appear functional on the surface yet struggle to maintain consistency. Effective emotional load management does not require eliminating stress, which is unrealistic. It requires reducing unnecessary internal friction. This includes unresolved conflicts, excessive self-judgment, rumination, and constant exposure to overstimulating environments. Each of these drains emotional resources silently. When unmanaged, they accumulate and compress cognitive flexibility. Clinically, progress accelerates when emotional weight is externalized and structured. Simple practices, such as clarifying priorities, setting psychological boundaries, and allowing deliberate mental rest, signal safety to the nervous system. Once emotional pressure decreases, the brain regains access to higher-order thinking, impulse control improves, and sustained effort becomes neurologically tolerable. Success becomes possible not through force, but through relief. The human brain is not designed to make an unlimited number of high-quality decisions each day. From a psychological perspective, every choice carries a cognitive cost. When decisions accumulate without structure, the brain experiences decision fatigue, which weakens impulse control, reduces accuracy, and increases avoidance. People often believe they fail because of poor discipline, when in reality they are cognitively overloaded long before meaningful action begins. Decision simplification works by reducing unnecessary choice and preserving mental energy for what actually matters. The nervous system functions more efficiently in predictable environments. When routines are stable and expectations are clear, the brain shifts from active deliberation to automatic processing. This conserves glucose, lowers stress hormones, and increases follow-through. What feels like willpower is often just the absence of excessive decision-making. Clinically, we observe that high-functioning individuals do not make better decisions, they make fewer of them. They predefine responses to recurring situations, eliminating the need for daily negotiation with themselves. This removes internal debate, which is one of the primary sources of mental exhaustion. When the mind is no longer trapped in constant evaluation, attention stabilizes. Simplification also reduces emotional reactivity. Fewer decisions mean fewer opportunities for self-doubt and second-guessing. The brain experiences clarity as safety. Once decisions are structured in advance, behavior flows with less resistance. Progress becomes consistent not because motivation increases, but because cognitive friction decreases. The system carries the weight so the mind does not have to. The human mind is exceptionally skilled at protecting its own narratives. From a clinical perspective, this is not dishonesty but self-preservation. Without external feedback, the brain fills gaps with assumptions, rationalizations, and distorted self-assessments. People either overestimate their progress to avoid discomfort or underestimate themselves to justify avoidance. In both cases, reality becomes blurred, and growth slows. A feedback and reality checking system functions as a psychological mirror. It interrupts internal storytelling and replaces it with observable data. The nervous system requires clear signals to recalibrate behavior. When feedback is absent or vague, the brain defaults to emotional reasoning rather than factual evaluation. This creates cycles of stagnation where effort feels intense but direction remains unclear. Clinically, we see that individuals who progress steadily expose themselves to feedback early and consistently. This reduces anxiety over time. Avoidance of feedback, on the other hand, increases emotional reactivity because uncertainty grows unchecked. The mind interprets ambiguity as danger. Clear information, even when uncomfortable, restores a sense of control. Reality checking also prevents identity distortion. Without it, people tie self-worth to imagined outcomes rather than measurable behavior. Structured feedback separates performance from identity, allowing adjustment without self-attack. When progress is measured, the brain can update expectations accurately. This stabilizes motivation and reduces emotional volatility. Success accelerates not through blind persistence, but through continuous psychological calibration grounded in reality. The human nervous system is not built for sustained bursts of extreme effort. From a clinical standpoint, intensity is metabolically expensive and psychologically unstable. While short periods of high drive can produce immediate results, they often trigger burnout, emotional collapse, or long recovery phases. The brain associates intensity with threat, not safety, and over time begins to resist it. This is why people who rely on sudden motivation experience cycles of progress and regression. Consistency, in contrast, trains the nervous system through repetition and predictability. The brain learns through patterns, not heroic effort. When actions are repeated at manageable levels, neural pathways strengthen without activating stress responses. This creates behavioral stability. What feels slow at first becomes automatic over time, reducing the need for conscious effort. Clinically, sustainable performance is observed when effort remains within the brain's tolerance window. Small, repeated actions signal safety and control. The nervous system remains regulated, allowing executive functions such as focus, planning, and impulse control to remain accessible. Intensity narrows attention and drains resources, consistency preserves them. Another critical factor is emotional trust. When individuals repeatedly fail due to overexertion, the brain learns to distrust future plans. Consistency rebuilds this trust. Each completed action reinforces predictability, strengthening self-regulation. Over time, progress compounds. Success stops feeling like a psychological struggle and becomes a natural outcome of stable systems rather than fluctuating emotional drive. Success is not a product of sheer willpower, fleeting motivation, or sporadic bursts of effort. It is the outcome of carefully constructed systems that align behavior with identity, manage emotional load, simplify decisions, provide honest feedback, and prioritize consistency over intensity. When these systems are in place, the brain stops resisting, the nervous system stabilizes, and progress becomes almost inevitable. True achievement is not about pushing harder, it is about designing your environment and mind so that effort flows naturally, effortlessly, and persistently. The most profound truth is this: success is hard only until your systems are stronger than your excuses. Build them, trust them, and watch what once felt impossible become your everyday reality.